Hi, friends. Welcome to the Online Ministry Podcast, a podcast all about helping you win in the online ministry world, all through the lens of the fact that we are two pastors who have just planted a completely online digital church. My name is Patrick.
My name is Tyler.
And again, we are two pastors of a church called Church Anywhere. Tyler's been in the online world for about 4 years, and through that, he's gained a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And I'm just now hopping on to this train 4 years later after the genesis of this. So I'm excited to learn. This podcast will really be about me asking questions and just my journey in learning, and then listening to Tyler help all of us understand what we need to know about the online ministry world. Tyler, for the last 3 weeks, we've talked through some of the strategy and the things that we thought about doing in the future. But this week, we kind of actually started to put our things that we're doing into place. Let's talk through the last week. What have we done? What have we been up to?
Yeah, a lot. It's been like a sprint over the start of this thing. So you guys have hopefully listened to the first couple podcasts, found out what our strategies are. And if you see that funnel sheet, you realize that's a whole lot of content creation. So we spent a ton of time creating content.
Yeah.
I know you've been learning like crazy on how to do video game ministry, all that good stuff.
It's weird.
Walk us through that.
It's just a strange thing. So basically my strategy for YouTube alone will be to make 3 videos a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's kind of the schedule. And so we've been at this for about like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think 3. Yeah.
3 weeks. And so I spent the first 2 weeks probably just learning YouTube culture. It sounds silly, but watching YouTube videos to see kind of what the popular, how to edit well, or how to edit in a way that people will still want to watch and listen and learn. But I will say that if you're jumping to the online ministry world, especially with YouTube and the content that I'm creating, and again, this is just content that's really just a foot in the door for people's lives so that they can be funneled down into community. These aren't necessarily spiritual videos. These are playing Madden and making a 7-foot-tall, 400-pound running back. You know,
it looked just like me in my playing days.
Destroy the league, right? And you know, making vlogs with my wife and my dog and I, and like looking through our lives and those sort of things. Those haven't necessarily been like spiritual videos, but they're just a foot in the door. But I will say, as I've kind of shifted to not learning so much, but rather just creating it, that I think these last 2 weeks would have been very much more beneficial if I would have made videos rather than learn. So I maybe spend a week learning about edits and a week learning about, okay, what's actually popular these days on YouTube and different platforms, but rather to make these videos and learn from my mistakes and then make better videos as we go along. It's like the classic proverb about making a good vase or a good clay pot. Like the way you make a good one is that you make 1,000 bad ones first. So I think that's what I've learned the most in 3 weeks, that this is just a lot about repetition and honing a craft, if you can even call it that.
It's weird because with content creation, there's no rules really.
Right, yeah.
And so like I was in school for audio engineering 8 years ago. And if I listened to some of the mixes that I like learned how to do it the proper way, back then, I would not have chosen any of that stuff in now. So it's really learning about all of what works for you, what works best for the gear that you have. And that's a hard thing to grab your mind around, because it's the opposite of every other kind of education in the world. Like to be a good lawyer, you have to learn all the laws. It's so on and so on. But with content creation, especially with the rapid increase in technology, everything's changing constantly, and there's no one right way to do it. So the more hands-on that you can get, specifically with digital ministry, the better that it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's great. Talk us through what you've been doing for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I've already been doing online ministry for a while, and so I haven't done a whole lot less or different things than I've been doing. So we've been focusing on increasing engagement within Facebook, specifically for the church page that's going to be turned into the Church Anywhere page. I've been trying to brainstorm ways to create, or I guess shift my audience that I've built on my own personal YouTube to more of a ministry-based audience. And I think I've got ideas for that. So I do like cover videos on YouTube, like 3 times a year. I'm going to try to do those more frequently.
Yeah.
And start throwing in some worship songs as well as like the other songs that I do. So stuff like that. And then really I've spent a whole lot of time writing curriculum and producing curriculum for an online course that we're doing for microsite leaders, which we'll get into here in a little bit. That took a whole lot of time. And then this is cool. Then I'm going to share this on here, and I don't know if they even want to know this, but
Cool.
Over COVID-19, we had the opportunity to be put on every tablet of every prisoner in the state of Indiana, which is crazy.
Super awesome.
So we're one of 4 churches now that they have the options to watch on their basically like an Amazon Fire device. And so that's like 27,000 people that have the potential each week to watch us. And somewhere around like 5,500 have been watching us consistently. And so I've been working with one of our other pastors on staff to put together a team of retired people that have time to just write back and forth to these prisoners. And so it's really cool. These prisoners are literally giving their lives to Christ, saying they want to type me in the comment section, but they can't, so they're writing it in a letter. So we're trying to figure out a discipleship plan with that. Last week I was on a conference call with the guy who is the head of religious services for all of the state of Indiana. And we found out that he wants us to write a proposal and put a packet together to make Church Anywhere basically the standard of how to do ministry within Indiana's prison system.
Incredible.
Which is awesome. So hopefully we'll start being able to partner with other churches to teach them how we do Church Anywhere.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll start seeing microsites just sprout up in like literally every prison in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, if you're a church in Indiana who is semi-close to a prison, please contact us, and we'd love to partner with you to bring Jesus into the prison system.
And that's not a knock on any other way of doing ministry in jail. This is just a very inexpensive and high reward on investment way to do this type of ministry. So I'm excited about that. I've been really working on this proposal for the last week.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's so good. So that's a little bit of a taste of what we've been doing for the last week, specifically, and maybe even a little bit into the last 3 weeks. We want to hop into a different discussion right now. Whenever we talk about online ministry, the question is always, how do we know that we're being successful? How in the world would you know that, okay,
what numbers do you track?
Yeah, what numbers are important? Why are you tracking some numbers and not others? How do you even know that people are listening if you can't see them and their family in a physical space or a physical seat?
And on the other hand of that argument too is you've got churches many have just started online. So in March of 2020, because of COVID-19, they started online, and they thought right away, oh my gosh, we have 50,000 more people online than we do in person. And like, I don't want to discourage you from that. Like, that's great. But it's so easy to get caught up in vanity metrics without having some form of plan of what you're actually going to track and how to stay healthy rather than just counting whatever Facebook tells you to count.
Right.
And so it's a really important thing that we're getting ready to talk about, because you could be easily manipulated into thinking you have something that you don't. I don't know how else to say that in a polite way.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly wise.
I was there like 4.5 years ago. That's where I was. And so in the last 4 years, I've really learned that that's not 100% accurate.
If you're a 500-person church and you see, Facebook has
2,000 views.
2,000 views, you're going to say, like, I just tripled, more than tripled in size. And it's crazy. And then we get back into the building in the next week or so, and it's like, where's the 2,000 people that were watching? It's just so easy when Facebook doesn't give you that information of what they're actually tracking to just get, I don't know, in a weird space about numbers, I guess. Yeah. Are there any other, before we hop into how we track health and growth and all that sort of stuff, are there any other misconceptions about these topics whenever it comes to online ministry that you've seen or that you've seen pastors fall into?
Yeah, because of the vanity metrics, online ministry can become essentially just an outreach to market your church. And while that's a great thing, I think that if we continue to focus on building relationships and next steps online, then the outreach portion takes care of itself. But if our main focus is just outreach and just marketing the physical building, I don't think that you can possibly be as successful online. I'm convinced that I say it all the time, the relationship trumps technology. Well, relationship always trumps the vanity metrics as well. If you can have a relationship with 50 people online, you got more of a shot of ever getting them in the building if they're close enough than you do if you have no relationship with 500 people that watch for 3 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome point, an awesome mindset to get into as we hop into our growth and health score. So we are going to be measuring our health and our growth in 2 ways, just like that, right? We have our growth trend, whether that growth with different numbers is going up or down, and we'll get to measure that week to week as well as see the span of growth 6 months, a year down the road. And then we'll also have a health score that we'll talk about a little bit later on in this podcast. But first, before we get into the health score, let's talk about our growth trend. Again, we're going to have another PDF. We would encourage you to look at it as we talk through it. It'll help kind of help everybody understand. But let's talk about this growth trend. There are 3 main things that we will be tracking. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Real fast to get into this, our church is really big into Christian Swartz's book, the Healthy Church Model or something. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, really into it, but can't remember.
Yeah, I've read it like 7 times. But it's got a different chapter for each element of a healthy church. So you got like exciting worship.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Engaging worship and then small groups and things like that. And so we kind of modeled our discipleship pathway off of that within a physical building. So we kind of took that and put it into this.
Yeah.
So we believe this can look like a healthy church online. So the growth trend, we're gonna track two different things, and then one of them gets broken down into multiple elements. So you have an engagement number. Now we spent a lot of time talking through where engagement goes on these 2 things. Yeah. You've got a growth trend, which is essentially your attendance. And then you've got a health score, which is essentially just next steps. And engagement is somewhere in the middle.
Right, like, it's kind of both.
Right, engagement's a good first step, or it's a good third step, but it also is kind of an attendance number as well. Like we can account for someone being involved in a video or a Facebook post or an Instagram post or a story or whatever if they engage with it. So it's kind of in the middle. We actually landed in the health score at one point, and we were going to use the engagement number as a 1/4 of a point. So it would only count for 1/4 of a point within our health score. We ended up putting it in attendance. I'm not sure that's the best place for it still, but this is what we're going to track.
Yeah, this is a moving thing too. Once we continue to figure out how better to manage and judge health and engagement and growth, like things will be moving around, I'm sure. Yeah.
We need to make sure we think of this not just as a church service on the weekend, because if, like I said, go back to our first couple of podcasts, you can see our overall strategy is lots of channels, lots of different soft touches and discipleship strategies. And so this engagement number could fluctuate each week, which was why it's so hard to put into a different place. Engagement is likes, shares, comments, really any other way that you can engage with a post.
Yep.
So we have engagement. That's self-explanatory. It's a number that we can just get from
the numbers of like shares, comments.
We use something called Content Studio, and it actually takes all of our channels and gives us one engagement number for the week, which is super, super useful.
It makes everything easier.
Right. So then we move on to attendance. So engagement and attendance. And our attendance, this is what we've decided on, is quality views, which we've been tracking for 4 years. And I'll get into how we do that in just a second. And then we have microsite attendance. So that's physical bodies that we can account for that don't come to 305 Oliver Street, which is our physical location.
If you didn't check out last podcasts with microsites, I definitely encourage you to do that to kind of get a feel for what that means.
Right. So the quality views for the weekend service since we've been doing it, are 15 minutes. That breaks down to 1/4 of our service online. Now, we realize that because our whole strategy is not built around a weekend service, we can't just choose 15 minutes as our arbitrary number to count a quality view, because some videos aren't going to be 15 minutes long. And so we've decided on a different kind of strategy for YouTube. So that's basically the quality view for a weekend service is going to stay at 15 minutes. Every other one is going to be this weird formula that we've created. Patrick, you tell us about it.
Okay, so with things like Facebook, YouTube, all those certain things, they have different ways to tell you your view count, but it's never the same thing. So with Facebook, every view is worth 3 seconds, right? Like every person who watches something.
Like the one under the video that you see, that's 3 seconds.
The one that is
with no sound. Doesn't have to have sound.
It's just 3 seconds. For YouTube, it's 30 seconds, I think.
Right.
So we've kind of tried to get a different formula here where, especially with YouTube, it's going to be the average watch retention multiplied by the total views per week. So if our watch retention is, let's say, 75% of the video is watched, we're going to multiply that by the total views because that's the actual quality view. The view counter on YouTube might say something like 500 views because that's how many views were for 30 seconds.
Right.
But the actual number of quality views of people who watched it for a majority or more amount of the time would be about 350 or 400.
Yeah, so this morning we did a case study with a video that I've had up for a year. We took just this last week. It had like 1.6 thousand views total. We multiplied it by the average retention, which was 66%, and it came up to 858. And so it's pretty close to say that if they watch 66% of the video, we'll count them as an attender or a viewer. And that was a whole lot less than what the view count was underneath the video.
So that way we kind of protect ourselves from a vanity perspective of saying, yes, like we had 5,000 views on this, but like 2%, it was a retention rate of 2%. That's not a good number at all. Yes, 5,000 people clicked on it, but they didn't hear or learn or listen at all.
We also want to make sure that we count the unique views and not the just overall views, which can also be found in both Facebook and on YouTube.
Right.
Because we don't want me to come in and click 50 times and be counted 50 times.
Well, I would like that for my own, but
I'll do that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to share it for you. Yeah, for Facebook, like you can see whenever you're scrolling through a feed, like a video will just start playing, and if you hover over that for at least 3 seconds, they will count you as a view, even if you have no idea what that video is about. I think that's just such an important piece to remember, because before I knew anything, you would see these Facebook videos that have 3 million, 6 million views on it, but the vast majority of those were people just scrolling by, and like it plays, but it's not, you have no idea what it actually is.
Yeah, and on Facebook within Creator Studio, you can go in and select, there's a checkbox that says only 15-second views or above. And so check that, because your audience retention percentage number is going to be so much lower if you let the 3-second views in. Like, for example, if you have like 500 minute-long views, but then like 2,500 3-second views, that percentage is really skewed. So you can check the only 15 seconds or above marker, and that brings the percentage a lot closer to reality.
Yeah. Sweet. So we are going to be judging our growth and our attendance and our engagement. Our growth trend will either be trending upwards or downwards based off of the number of quality views and physical attendance in microsites.
And that one's pretty self-explanatory.
Right.
If you come to a microsite, you're one body.
You count as one.
Yes. The thing that we want to share with our team, with our elders, with the leadership team at First Capital Ministries is really just an arrow pointing up. So we will have access to the actual numbers. A bird's eye view will look like engagement was up, attendance was up, microsites were down, or something like that.
Right.
Hopefully they're all up.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to dive into a little bit with this growth trend?
No, it's really just a trend. We want to track if it's going up or if it's going down. Then if it's consistently going down, we reevaluate what we're doing to make that happen. But the stuff that we're probably going to be reevaluating is more beneficial in the health score. So this health score, if it's going down, then I would just assume that the attendance and engagement are also going down.
Right.
Whereas if it's a healthy church going up, then the attendance is also going up.
Yeah.
Goes back to that natural church development. That's the name of the book.
We figured it out, y'all. That's awesome. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is an overall health score. We've been having this conversation for a while now of trying to better judge whether our church is in a healthy position or not, because a lot of churches, not anything against this, but a lot of churches measure giving and butts and seats, and that's kind of the baseline of whether they're a healthy church or not. And we know that like that's not necessarily the best way to judge a health of a church. So we've tried to we're trying to think through a better way to have a better report card or a health score for our church. Now, this conversation is going to get a little bit different, a little bit weirder than maybe because it's weird to us, and we're the ones that kind of created it. So we put all these numbers on a weighted scale. So some things mean more or are weighted higher than others. And there's also a variety of different things that we're measuring here. Why don't you walk us through kind of just from top to bottom, walk us through this health score.
Yeah, first, so Brady Shearer did a video similar to what we're about to talk about probably 5 years ago or something, about I think he called it an engagement scorecard.
Okay.
And so we're not the first people to ever think of this idea. I've talked to multiple online pastors about how I thought this would be the way to go to get an accurate representation of your health. I'm really excited to implement it, though. I don't know any churches really that are implementing this yet. And I think that we can be the guinea pigs for you guys if you want to see how it goes. But
right.
I think this is going to be an accurate picture of how we're actually doing.
Yeah.
So we have basically 4 tiers, 4 or 5 tiers. We've got things like joining a group. So on our funnel strategy, we want people to join groups. However, we realize it's probably pretty easy to get them to join a group. And so that's weighted at a 1 point. Same thing with the connection card. Like, that's great. It's a next step. It's probably not as significant, though, as a baptism.
Right.
So that's 1 point.
And new group members mean like Facebook groups, things like Instagram pages, Discord group members. All those things are going to be measured as a 1. Yep. Let's keep it going.
So at the beginning of our, like when we start new groups, obviously that number will spike for a second. But we need to look at this from, like, once again, like 30,000 feet, bird's eye view of long-term trends. So we realize there'll be occasional spikes, but I think this is hopefully going to be an accurate long-term. Something that we're really passionate about and excited about is this family database that we've talked about multiple times, where we get to hopefully walk a parent from 0 to 18 with their child and be in their lives that way. So if somebody enters that database and signs up to have these coaching tips for 18 years, that's probably worth a little bit more than joining a Facebook group.
Right.
So that's worth 2 points.
Yeah. So these are all weighted based off of the percentage of chance, or at least this is how I've described it as, like a percentage of chance of life change happening within their family or their life. That's how we've kind of come up with a 1 or a 2 or a 3. That's what we measure based off of.
Right.
Yep.
So a new class leader, like a girl here named Crystal is leading a women's class for the first time. So when she decided to lead that class, it would be a 2 point for her, because that's a next step for her. This next one I'm really excited about, and I still have no idea what it's actually going to look like. We've kicked around ideas, but our sending church partners with an organization called Project Manana in the Dominican Republic. And whenever Randy, our senior pastor, made this announcement about going phygital and like we're doing this digital church plant kind of deal, Project Manana guy in DR, his name's Brian, he was really excited about it. So much so that he sent me a voicemail and was like, "What if we did a virtual mission trip?" And I said, "What is that?" And so we've had a lot of dialogue of what that could look like for our culture, and I'm excited to get those launched probably this fall, at least with a pilot group. Probably our team would be a part of that,
especially since we don't know. I mean, honestly, we don't know the next time we can go on a physical mission trip.
Exactly, and also what an awesome first step into getting someone involved in physical missions.
Yeah, so good.
And to be able to, let's just use a Vacation Bible School. We produce a Vacation Bible School on iPhones, and via Zoom, we interact with these kids.
Yeah.
I can do that with anybody, anywhere. And so, Patrick, you and I could be in here producing a Bible story while Dee Dee from Missouri is singing the worship, and
so cool.
Simon from London is doing the closing prayer.
Yeah.
So cool. So that's worth 3, though. So if they sign up for an online mission trip, we think that's probably 3 times more likely to produce life change than joining our Facebook group. These are arbitrary numbers. It's like, whose line is it anyways? Like, the points don't matter. We kind of just picked random numbers based on how we thought that the likelihood of life change would be.
Right.
So the final two, we're not tracking a crazy amount of things here. We could have easily put way more than this on there, but these are the ones we just selected based on our funnel system. Our baptisms, and then microsite leaders, volunteer campus pastors. So baptisms, obviously, like one of the biggest decisions that you can make in your entire life. That's worth 5 points. That's a huge deal. But we realized that we could have easily put that as 10, and we tried to.
Yep.
we wanted that to be a 10.
Right. That's our.
But as we brought this before some other leaders, they talked about how, like in the last few years, we've baptized 200 plus people. That's a lot more frequent than creating a microsite leader.
Right.
So in 3 years, we have 19 microsite leaders compared to 3 years and 260 baptisms or whatever. And so a microsite leader is worth 10 because it's not very frequent, and it's a huge next step for someone.
If we're talking about percentage of life, like chance of life change, leading and pastoring a group of people, I mean, should be at the top of that list.
Sure. Some of these microsite leaders, if you look at our current microsites, they're leading like 200 or 300 people, and they're volunteers.
Right.
And they've committed for years at a time. And so that's our like top of the health score. And we realize that won't happen very often. I say that, and I hope that it does happen.
Right. Yeah. I would love that.
Me too. I would love for God to just be laughing at us right now and be like, well, you're starting 50 microsites next year.
Right.
But, that's kind of the top of the health score.
That's awesome. So that's the health score. Again, it's weighted with, I don't think arbitrary sounds negative. I don't necessarily think that that's a negative thing to say, that we've weighted this based off of, like, obviously a baptism is going to do more in a personal life of a person than just being like clicking join on a Facebook page.
By arbitrary, I just meant we could have put that was worth 60 or 100.
Right.
We just chose like 1 through 10.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this health score, this growth trend, both of these numbers will combine in order to see whether we're being healthy or not, whether we're growing or not, whether we are being successful in the online ministry world, or if there's some things that we need to reconsider, redo, or just revamp. Yeah. Is there anything else about this health score that we need to dive into right now?
I would if you decide to take this kind of a model, it's really important to have just something simple to be able to share with your leadership. It's important to get, especially in online ministry, it's important to get leadership on board with it, because there could be that butting of heads with,
right. You don't want that.
We don't see the growth, because a lot of this is going to be really slow growth. And so for us to be able to say we're trending upward or downward, and here's our health score to our elders and to our leadership, is going to go a long way, I think.
I think that's so good. I think that's really good. Especially because this is such a new thing, and it's so hard. Like, it's even hard for myself to understand it, and I'm like diving in,
right.
Intensively. I think that's the word, intensively these last 3 weeks, and it's still hard for me to play catch up. I can't imagine. And I grew up
digitally native.
Yeah, I know all this sort of stuff. It'd be so hard for a group of elders or shepherds to walk in and some of these words, online mission trip might sound weird for them. Quality view, I mean, that's just a completely weird term. So if there's a way to say we're trending upward, our health score is good, these are the way that we measure it, is so helpful for a leadership to get behind.
Anybody can understand next steps. They don't have to know the ins and outs of how everything works, but they can understand that people are taking next steps in their relationship with Christ. And that's the simplest way we could think to do it.
Yeah, so good. With that, I think that's where we'll end today's episode. That's our growth trend. That's our health score. Again, if you could rate this, subscribe to this wherever you're listening to this or watching this podcast, that would be so helpful, especially if you know of a pastor who could use any of this information or wisdom that Tyler's bringing. Please share it with them. And as always, remember that relationship will always trump anything else, whether that's technology or whether that's views. Relationship will beat all of that any day. From Tyler and myself, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.